level 1 technique of the beginner, me hit hard, is defeated only by a level 2 technique. To step to the side, never meet that force head on. I want to shut down all of your lines and make it so that your next action is larger than my countering action.
There's something peculiar about an amateur sword fighter who hasn't practiced. So it's not actually a fighter, I suppose, in that sense.
Right.
Someone who's not formally trained. The way they might pick up a sword and come at you, that comes with a certain danger that you wouldn't have to worry about when you're fencing someone who actually has at least the foundations and is maybe like more in the intermediate range. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, when we think about the threat level of fighters, sometimes we consider the threat level actually to start at a certain threshold. As somebody starts to gain their first bit of experience, it goes down because they're fighting in their own body, they're trying to learn new skills, they're trying to become a little more orthodox, they're trying to learn a plan. Of course, you get worse in a certain kind of way. You're on a path, you're getting better perhaps in your technical skills, but maybe your success and how many times you hit somebody, especially if you don't care about getting hit yourself, might drop down. And then you start this slow progression to becoming a much more dangerous opponent. But this early stage is still, from the person facing you, it's more erratic, has a different set of goals than a more experienced fighter might bring to you.
An untrained person may be more dangerous to the more experienced one, but it's not like that's good for them.
Right.
They are definitely going to die.
Right.
It's just a question of, will the more experienced person also get injured or maybe die?
Yeah, and George Silver made that comment that we can't really judge the worth of a master until they've been able to show their skills against a man in his ire who is unskilled but rash, another expert, and a drunken man. So two of Silver's 3 people he cares about are a little bit erratic in some way. And I think that is a real test of skill. And it is also, in any training environment, we often start in symmetry. So meaning it's useful if your partner's kind of trying to do the same things as you. It helps you both mirror from one another. But then as you get more experience, you actually want to start challenging yourself with asymmetry. So somebody who is not fighting to the same strategy or who is more erratic, or those things test your development to isolate better what the principles are. So, hey, you're not doing the right thing stops becoming an excuse and now starts becoming a teaching tool. Oh, okay, you're not doing the thing I'm expecting. What physical control do I actually have of the situation? How do I take a physical control? Physical control is what gives us tactical control and strategic control.
In some ways, the untrained person can be very easy to counter. If they just rush in blindly and they just have this big overswing, they just come in like this, it's totally exposed, you can shut that down. That is not the problem. That's not the kind of issue. Where it can become more of a problem is, for example, if you're in a high guard, so you're ready to cut down, and I ignore that, I just go.
Right.
So you'll absolutely probably chop my head off, but I might still, run you through with the blade because it's a completely reckless, unreasonable thing to do at that moment, to just ignore the threat and just go for it.
Yes.
That could be a problem.
Yeah. And in modern practice, we get even more of this because, as you mentioned, the beginner who rashly did that attack in a historical setting, well, they probably died.
Yeah.
And so there's a type of naturally selective force that starts to weed out more of those people. Whereas nowadays, that person might even come out of this encounter thinking, hey, that worked pretty good. I hit that guy in the belly. Sure, he got me in the head, but really the point is to hit the other guy, and I did that. So you can get a greater persistence of those things. And even in some modern tournament environments, sometimes the person who is more rash but just hits a little more, if you get 60% of the points in a tournament, then you win that bout. And so it can be rewarding for a long time until you meet the truly higher level fighters who know how to shut that down.
That's a good point, yeah. Particularly also depending on how the points are counted.
Right.
It should be penalized, but...
Sometimes the penalty is actually, maybe if your strike comes in before mine, then mine is an afterblow, and in some formats, you actually still score a little more than I do. Mm-hmm. So you can seek that, make sure you hit first environment. Yeah. And, again, if you're focusing on, if I'm only so good at my defense, and you focus purely on your offense, then my defense is going to fail. If I'm focusing on defending, which we say is sensible, the fact that I'm still not that experienced in my defense will end up being overwhelmed, and we'll end up maybe in one of these 60-40 situations.
If you're comparing taking a hit, so you get points, versus I cause a double in that same scenario, that's technically better for me, even though in the real world, in history, you're dead either way.
Yes.
Like, you're not benefiting from that at all. Now, there is the dying man's effort to break even. For example, like one of them has been run through, say, with a rapier, and just as a last-ditch effort, cuts or thrusts as well. So, like, I know I'm probably going to die, so I'm going to take you with me.
Right.
That's one thing, but you still, the outcome is, it's the worst case scenario.
Right. Yeah, and we might think about fight or flight responses. Some people's response to high stress situations is fight.
Yeah.
And so that might irrationally, and with adrenaline going, their reaction to the threat might just be to counterattack irrationally. So we have to always be aware of that potential. So I think there's a real martial need to deal with this. I think it's why George Silver mentions it historically. The main thing is just it comes up way more now than it did from that historical context.
So let's take this example that I just brought up. So you're in a high guard, and so as the clueless person, I'm just going to try to rush in. How would you try to respond to that?
So I think in this scenario, so for whatever reason I'm in a high guard, I might in some ways ideally not want to set myself here
not.
if you are, but we can imagine, maybe even I just cut at you and you just moved away from this. And so I'm now in a high guard and you decide to come back to counter on this low line.
How would someone with no trained? Probably something like this, probably just like an arm action because they're not used to fencing from the body.
First thing that I might seek to do here, I just noticed that I took distance and angle.
Yeah.
So I want to buy myself some time. I'm not only buying myself time by directly moving back, I'm moving back and away. So this just puts everything behind my weapon. It also, by stepping off the line, if you do have something else, a lot of beginners learn very quickly that they can like make a yielding or hanging cover and make another cut. By stepping this way, even if you start to yield to cover yourself, I have more access to targets here, and everything is trapped more to this side of my weapon. I would much rather come out of this guard and put myself in a covering line. So by reducing the distance between our swords, I now, again, am taking away your options. But notice I didn't like reach down to your sword because now I actually make myself more open in the high line. I want to keep this space. So, if you come at my leg, I can still pull my leg away. But if you come to any vital target, my sword is already in the way of that vital target. So I'm just taking those options away from you.
So if you're in that position that you just talked about, so we're not talking about someone who knows, for example, I might be able to go to the hand. No, they see this and it's like, I have to come around. Like they're probably not really going to do a whole lot else because even as an untrained person, they're probably not going to want to go to the leg because the blade is still there. Like they can still see that.
Yes.
So you've narrowed it down to a high percentile of this is probably going to be that.
Correct. By establishing that a little bit of that distance right away, I am, even if you do decide to go to my legs, I'm going to make sure that you're going to have to take another movement, another tempo to get to the legs, which is going to give me yet more time. So, in that scenario, and I've certainly encountered this, you've made your big dire thrust at me, I've moved away, and then if you start to move towards my legs, I'm still in a place where I can pull my legs away. And this is actually a great opportunity. Just by reassembling, pulling my legs together, I get my thrust at your head. That all being said, I don't always fight point forward. Against a beginner, there's a lot of benefit to it. But if you are newer yourself, putting your sword forward can make it more vulnerable. I'm very aware of how vulnerable or not vulnerable my sword is to somebody, and I know how to position it. But in the beginning, that can feel, you do knock my sword away, and then suddenly I'm at this disadvantage, my weapon's out of the way. So for some, that might not be the best counter against a beginner at the start. If you have to go fight a fight against a beginner, and you're just really a beginner plus, your strategy there, if you haven't had time to practice shutting down lines, it might be more about keeping a little bit of distance, trying to actually get them to expend themselves and practice more that distance and angle idea. See if you can make your way off the line and just get your cover.
What a lot of untrained people and beginners also do is target the sword a lot, but not in an effective way.
Right.
Not like a mechanically efficient beat that they then follow up with,
Yeah,
but,
they make
but
big
just
swings.
like they will just try to knock it aside and,
Yes.
and then do something from there. So like, this, and then, this was probably already too much, but it might be a little bit clunkier, this, and then
just come back.
that kind
Absolutely.
of thing. So that, of course, I'm guessing disengage would be your
Disengage
your
is
choice?
certainly the go-to there. If I see, and beginners often are showing a lot of information, so I've got a lot to work on. Again, note that as I made this strike, I moved off to my left. I'm doing the same idea here. I'm giving myself time and space against your weapon, even as I make this disengage and thrust. What if the thrust doesn't take? What if it doesn't finish you off? What if I hit some armor? I like to think in this kind of more martial sense. I want to make sure, or some beginners can be bendier than you expect and manage to dodge their way out of things. So as I'm making that disengage, I'm always seeking here. I've turned my true edge towards that side. If your weapon comes back faster than I expected, I'm in my position to make cover over it. Threat is one of my defensive tools. So I want to think about when I strike you, that is because that's the optimal way to defend myself in that moment. And there are times when I might maybe just making an uncovered attack, maximizing getting to target as quickly as possible is right. Because you've swung so wide, well, I want to maximize getting there. But here, you were out of position, but not crazy out of position. So I made sure that my striking is done. I took a little extra time to make sure that I have the cover over your returning line. One of the first things I think an intermediate fencer needs to learn against defeating the more reckless fighter is I want to, in Italian fencing we call it stringere, constraint, I want to shut down all of your lines and make it so that your next action is larger than my countering action. And if you've cut out to me and then you're going to be working here, part of what I'm doing is, this is the threat part, but note I'm using the long position here, I'm actually in the short position technically, but because I'm crossing over you, your motion around is actually quite a long motion. So as you're making that, I can actually hit you.
Yes, you can hit me while I come around.
That's right. And now I might not lop your hands off with a short cut like this, but trust me, I'll get a good start. Even as I hit into the hands, I can actually my action to get behind your weapon and deflect you is so small, and it requires so little force. I think one of the errors, again, people sometimes make when they see somebody coming this way is either they get caught into this kind of idea. The problem with this is it's fully defensive in nature, and as you noted, if you just keep going or target my hands or whatever, you're going to get through it at some point. By being out here, I'm extending my defense farther from me, and I'm reducing the time to get to targets on you. So that's giving myself a time advantage, whereas this is actually equaling. I'm kind of allowing you to take all that time.
What I also like about this angle here is that sometimes, if someone comes in with a really powerful sword, like sometimes if you just try to catch it like this, it might just blow through straight up. That's not going to happen.
Yes.
Like even if it's very powerful, all that happens is it might hit your guard, and that's that.
Yes.
It's stopped.
Yeah, so we call that in our system collecting. So where we point across to make this slope that forces you into the cross means that I'm actually using more of my alignment to the ground to deal with you. So even a very powerful blow is actually going to be braced through the structure of my body versus me needing to use the strength of my arms, or in some types of parrying, we actually need to have our own kinetic energy to counter their kinetic energy. I'm not relying on those things. Because as we know, this can get, especially the turn of the hips and the pulling on the pommel, especially a long handle, that thing can go hard. And so I don't want to be fighting, I don't want to try to fight strength with strength, because you're always going to meet somebody who can strike more powerfully than you.
Yeah. Also, if you try to meet it, if it's a feint, then you're wasting time by moving over there.
Yeah, and a lot of people think, in the Zverch, and you can actually get quite tight with it. It doesn't even need to have this distance. We can be cutting these more half sort of circles.
You just kind of start to indicate and then come
and then
right
it can
back
come,
around.
you can do a lot to feint. And so I want, again, to be very low commitment in that action. So, because I don't need to strike into it, as you were commenting, if you're making an action towards me and I'm covering, and one of these is a feint. So if we come and you feint here on one of these, we'll find out. I'm just going to keep covering. Maybe feint on this one here. I follow. I'm actually still, because I can still cover the feint. It's just that my cover is so small that I can then still respond to your true intention. I'm sure a lot of people historically as well would have just tried to use some succession of blows. And typically those do just go right, left, because that's kind of the easiest way to flow with the energy, whether it's in these horizontal arcs or whether it's just, making downward blows back and forth.
It is pretty awkward awkward if you're not trained to actually stop it, because they tend to overswing, right? So it is going to be this, and then it maybe comes around here, as opposed to just, that kind that takes more training that they're not going to do.
Just to have the control to be able to make a believable attack feint, and to have the biomechanical control to be able to deviate in action.
When you're facing someone and you don't really know yet what they're going to do, do you have certain ways you like to kind of feel them out, like certain little provocations to see what their response is?
Yeah, so in Duello Armazzare, we focus the first level of learning. It's called the true fight. So the true fight is about learning how to constrain the opponent through physical position, trying to force them into larger actions so you can take shorter actions. So the nice thing is that all good fencing tactical and strategic frameworks are based on physics as opposed to agreement. So it doesn't matter what you're thinking about for the blows, whether you've got any education or not. The things we talked about are physical principles. So once I've learned how to physically control a situation, then I have more tactical control of it. It also means that I can probe that situation more safely. My first probing occurs as we come on guard, or even in a tournament setting, I train my students to look at how somebody warms up. If somebody is coming out and they're like, you can see, okay, that person's like, if they're like practicing a bunch of one-handed thrusting, whatever, you can go, okay, I've learned a bunch about that person before we've even saluted. So we want to take in those notes. We want to look at the person's body. Somebody who is tall and lanky versus short and stocky, they are going to, if they've developed some experience, are going to be predisposed to things that function for their body type, more likely. So we're building a bit of a hypothesis. Now we can't test our hypothesis in a reckless way. I'm pretty certain this is what's going to happen. But we test and update very quickly. One thing we want to do is move in, move out for testing hypothesis. So I'm going to move in, and again, mentioning cover. If I see you, I don't quite know what you're doing. We don't have a lot of space to work with here, we can imagine. I might take like a long position and just seek to cover this space. So I'm giving threat, but I've also created angle. And so I might see if you immediately start to act into this space without regard for my sword, I've learned that right away. If you attack at my sword, or if you come out to meet me, so I moved out, but I learned, the threat, you wanted to come to my weapon. So I'm learning right away, are you more attacking oriented or defensively oriented? I can feel right away, did you come really hard to my sword? Or some people might even just come out and be like, I'll just put my sword on top of your sword.
An inexperienced person is not going to go from this side and cut over there in one motion. They're going to switch first and then...
Yeah, and so I'm just going to cover you. Oh, you've told me a whole bunch. That action, just the fact that you didn't try to beat at my sword, you just instead came out, you came to the side that was actually weaker. I've learned so much from there. Many people would have put their sword under my sword.
Yeah, that's not what a beginner normally would do.
Yeah, no, they would often, because they wouldn't really recognize that the angle of the sword has any bearing on the situation.
As a trained person, it's immediately obvious, but someone who may not, if you just
100%.
take that position, it may look like, I can just
go for
it. I can just kind of go
it totally
past
seems,
it.
Yeah, it seems it's one of these things that feels like common sense only once you have the sense.
Yeah, it's more natural to strike from this side.
Totally.
A lot of people just don't really do backhand cuts.
And people may have also had the experience against inexperienced opponents that they could just cut hard enough and they'd actually just push the person's sword away. I'm just going to cut through their sword to them.
That seems likely, because they don't understand the geometry.
Right, and their experience could also be even that the person who's got their sword forward, that as they act, this person's habit might be to pull away to strike, because a lot of people when their sword is forward pull away to strike. Yeah. So this person may have learned a weird lesson that if I just attack ferociously, this person often gets hit because they pulled away. Which again, these are all, and it's easy to learn these lessons, especially if you're in a place that you're just learning through fighting. It's very easy to learn a bunch of weird lessons through just learning from fighting.
Yes.
We've all learned some weird lessons at times we had to unlearn.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, constraint is definitely a big part of it. I want to just shut down those lines. Then how you respond to that constraint tells me a lot. I often, constraint or stringere has this other component. It's not just shutting down lines. It is also turning up the heat on you. The word stringere in Italian means to squeeze. So I might create this cover position, and then I just start to squeeze you. So I start to press in, and then I see, do you back up? Do you press forward? Do you seek cover? Does that make you attack? Did that confirm or disconfirm my hypothesis? okay?
I just noticed something about that too that would apply very much to beginners, because when at first when you practice footwork, there's a lot of focus on kind of mirroring the footwork to maintain the same distance, so as a drill. So when seeing that, the impulse is, oh, I'm just gonna go over here, which of course is the opposite of what I want, because then I make it even worse for myself.
You do.
Because I'm going into your strong.
More. Correct. Yeah, under that angle more.
Yeah.
And that also tells me something. If you moved this way or sought to press my weapon, I can go, okay, I thought he was a beginner, but he is at least a beginner with a little bit more knowledge than I thought. No part of me goes through a little hypothesis checklist in my mind, and I don't talk to myself in words about these things now. But in the beginning, you have to. Everything is learned if you're learning through a structure, which has a lot of benefit for accelerating most people more quickly along the path. You want to go, that's part of the practice. So you spend a bunch of practice time fighting where you go, you make a hypothesis, you just make a snap judgment about somebody, and you go in and go out. And as you fail and succeed at that, your brain starts to do some much more complex pattern matching. One can train themselves to spot those very early. Did he step this way to match me, or did he move this way? And so for me, that's like tingles a spidey sense. I just like, oh, I'm already learning. Oh, did he strike out firmly? Did he kind of wind up a little bit before he did something? You know, all those things I can learn all of that story in moments. Where things can get tricky and where people can outthink themselves in a fight is that there is the physical reality, but then there is this kind of predilection on the part of the person and their knowledge. In that I could be thinking the whole time, you're there, and I could be thinking, he's got to go around my sword, because of course he can't go directly to my sword. And so I'm actually putting all my attention in the right thing to do. And instead you're just thinking, sword cut good, hit hard. And then I'm like over here, doing something totally different. And boom, you blow my sword away or you hit me. Well, I'm thinking about step 2 or step 3 of the fight that you're not even trying to get to.
Good point.
So we have to make sure that we don't over-fence a beginner. The level 1 technique of the beginner, me hit hard, is defeated only by a level 2 technique, I constrain direct line. What I don't want to be doing is trying to think about a level 3 technique, like, oh, I'll make a feint, and then because you might not even have the perceptive experience to even know what the beginning of an attack looks like.
Right.
So while I'm kind of going like this and making some little half feint or whatever, you're just, me hit hard. That's, again, it's somebody trying to use a level 3 or a level 4 technique against somebody who can't even play in that space. Those techniques don't even make contextual sense there. The person who's winning it only needs a level 2 technique to win. They couldn't apply a level 4 technique. They would lose if they were trying to do that. Their opponent needs to push them into that space. I need to see, oh, this person actually knows how to shut down that line. So now I'm going to pretend to be acting in this line to lure them into shutting down that line so that I can. It requires that I have to have probed and understand that is true of you, and it needs to be true of you. Otherwise, against the beginner, what I need to do is just shut down the physical space, make sure the physics are working on my side, and have a general mental model of you. You hit hard, you hit light, you go around, you come forward, the kind of very basic idea.
Another potential danger I could see from a beginner might be focusing on the legs, like in an unsafe way. So where they just they tend to lean forward to reach the leg,
right? Yes.
This kind of thing, which you can shut that down quite easily by hitting to their head. But sometimes if they just suddenly do it out of the blue in a very reckless way, it might take you off guard. If you just suddenly just do this, that could be a danger.
Right. And I think that there's often an overemphasis, not just on the part of teaching, but on the part of many people's just internal spirit. I think the main thing I have to work against for people is getting them to back up when they defend. Most people's instinct, especially if they're a fighty sort of person, and I was a fighty sort of person, was, I want to defend while I move forward. I want to get there, especially also if you're shorter than your opponent. I'm taller than you. There's very natural that you might develop an instinct, even a rational one, to think, I need to defend while moving in so that I can get inside of your range where I can do my work and you can't. The problem is, as soon as we add leg attacks in there, that is killer for you. It's so difficult, even when we think, one, they're reckless, but even here, if I'm attacking to your high line and you defend against this, right? So if we do the same thing again, how did you know that this was an attack to your leg? It's impossible to tell. Because
really
this angle is only maybe a few degrees difference to be to the leg versus to the shoulder.
At the very end, by the time you see it, it's already in your leg.
That's right. And so that's why distance must be an intrinsic part of all defense that we make. You're going to need to time your entries in such a way that you know the leg attack is not available. You're going to need to lure them out into the high line attack. By keeping your distance, if I start to reach, it starts to get bad for me as a tall person. And so now you have the opportunity to attack my arms, or to keep some distance and get some cover over the weapon. And then be able to enter afterwards. You want to lure me into that space, but all of that is going to be predicated on really good distance management.
Are there any other cases you can think of where a beginner might be particularly dangerous?
I think one big challenge is if there is a lot of exuberance on the part of a beginner. Like sometimes people are just so worried about how hard that person's going to begin. Like certainly Fiore, so our ancient Italian master, his kind of beginner that he talks about is he talks about the peasant's strike or the villager's strike. And he says this is somebody coming strongly downward with an overhand blow, maybe even with a poleaxe. So he's kind of giving us this classifier that what does an inexperienced person do in his mind? Probably comes charging in and just makes a big downward blow. And his answer to this isn't to try to mix it up and control that space, because maybe there's so much mass on that side that even if structurally, if you're doing your job right, they just need a little bit of turn, they're going to overpower your weapon. And so, his answer, and I think it's still a good one, is kind of like the disengage answer, but it's even just to, Fiore says, as they're coming with the blow, to step to the side, take a small piece of it, and this is like shows up in Japanese martial arts too, is just to yield to that force, take that force away from them, put yourself under a hanging cover, but again, we're controlling distance and space. Let that person expend themselves. Never meet that force head on. I think the other thing that often where people will get hit by these exuberant beginners is as the beginner starts to wind up, instead of taking that moment, this person freezes. They have a freeze response. And so then, or they have just a panic defense response because they're just so worried about how hard that's going to come.
Intimidation of coming in, especially if it's a big opponent.
Oh, totally. And that intimidation, and some people's strategy, especially if they're inexperienced, is just based on that. I'm going to own this space through the dominance of my presence. And that can make people act in much more foolish ways. And so, again, our first counter is to use distance, but we also have to make sure the way I'm using distance is not this kind of using distance. My goal in distance is never to escape, it is to control tactical space. I want to be more in this kind of readiness. I'm too far away, but I still have this readiness to me.
Someone who has not been trained technically, but is physically quite strong and fit and everything, they may have that confidence of, okay, I'm just going to get in there and destroy them. But it's not informed confidence. So that's where that might fall apart. Because they're just, for example, someone like that who is, like physically imposing and strong and everything, they might seek to try to rush into grapple. That would also be something to contend with. What would be your response to that? Someone who really just tries to press as much as they can, just get in there and just grapple and take it to the ground.
One is, can I avoid grappling at all here? So if I can be aware, my hypothesis tells me very early on, this person looks like somebody who's going to rush me, then what I want to take control of is I want to control the when of the rush. So I think the mistake would be, okay, I'll just be here, and when they come, I'll do my counter. Because now you're actually putting yourself on the back foot already. When we can take control of that pre-stage, now I can control the when. They've already told me the what. I'm going to try to rush in, cover from below or cover from above. So I know the what. I just need to control the when. So now I'm going to lure you in by, offering my sword or making an attack that appears to be the one that you can take, or taking that little step in that makes you feel. But because it's coming on my terms, because I'm the one triggering it, I can now trigger it and counter. So I can seek to keep my distance, move to the side, come around your cover, cut. Generally, I seek to cut arms as a nice target to see, because when somebody's going to grapple, they start to extend their arms in order to be able to control that space. They don't tend to grapple weapon away. They're not going to belly bounce me. They tend to want to get in under the cover of their weapon in some way. So they're going to make a lot of exposure there. So that's what I seek to find, often upward cuts into the arms. And the only thing we have to be aware of is that in a duel or in a tournament situation, the trigger might simply be that the marshal says, begin. I would start with that hypothesis. This person might just charge me right away. When they don't charge you right, so you're just ready, so they go, boom, oh great, I was ready for them to charge and I got them. But if they don't, then you make sure that you're the one who causes the trigger.
Right, some people are chomping at the bit, and as soon as the
Totally,
ghost signal gauge just
yeah, and I think that's
the
a
steam
mistake
train is
a lot
chugging
of people
along.
make is they think, oh, I'm going to have a little time to, oh, okay, no, I'm not. You know, like, so we come with the hypothesis, this person's probably going to charge me right away. So I'm already ready to cut into their arms and move to the side. And then if they don't, then I'm going to use an entry movement to trigger them. And then they're going to do what I want when I want. And so I'm going to then be able to take my counter. So that's the real key there. The other is counter grappling with them. Sometimes often people say, I have a really hard time getting good grapples on people. And part of that is because the person you're grappling with doesn't want to grapple with you. So if you want to grapple with somebody who doesn't want to grapple with you, you've got to be really confident of luring them into overcommitment to be able to get that grapple. What I don't want to do is be more in the space of like, I guess I'll see what happens, and when they grapple, I'll do my best. That's perfectly fine for practice, but if you're really thinking about beating somebody in a grappling situation, I want to lure them into that space.
Sometimes the less skilled opponent can just score a hit by just being faster. Like if they're just physically faster, and they have to be quite a bit faster if they're mechanically inefficient about it, or in telegraph potentially. But if it's not too bad on that end, they might be just so fast that they catch you before you can react. But like you demonstrated, this framing, like inviting a certain action and closing off certain lines, then you know that it's not like this quick snipe from that side is just not happening.
It's just not there.
They can't do, even if they're quick, what are they going to do? Nothing.
Yeah.
Right. So it would have to come from the other side, and even then you can see that come from there.
And even here, because this is a strategy I would use against an experienced fast person as well. If that person is faster than me, then I want to make sure that I'm controlling the proportion of the fight. So I want to make sure that everything that happens, you always have to move more than I do. So that even though you're faster, I'm giving myself a distance advantage to try to counter that. And one is, of course, this type of distance, but another is this blade imposition type of distance. The second part is trying to control the when. I want to, as little as possible, be in a situation where I know you're moving because I've watched you cover half the distance, and now, oh, he's almost at me. Right. So I want to start controlling the moments when it's available for you too. So, even just taking that entry that comes to your measure, I know that if you're going to strike me, this was your moment. And if you didn't take it, I'll move away. So I'm going to give you that moment again, and then and you're going to see, oh, I've got to hit him at this moment. But I recognize that. I know that by my stepping in, this is the time when you can physically reach me. So I'm going to predicate you to making your attack at that time, which will allow me to act earlier.
All right, well, that covers a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.